talking about with World War One, the weapons. There we go. The weapons. And with that, we were talking about how the weapons changed in World War One. What caused the weapons to change?
The Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution, which brought about
The tank, the planes,
tanks and planes,
machine guns,
bomber planes. Okay, not just a plane, but bomber planes by the end of the war.
machine guns.
Machine guns that could fire 100 rounds per minute,
Oh, yeah.
much
and
faster than when they had to like load it and load it and load it. Because before that, all they had was what, like rifles and
Single
shotguns
shot.
and stuff. Like
It was a mix of the shotgun
And
and the
single
cannon.
shot muskets that you had to like pour the powder.
you had to
in.
pour the powder in and like stuff it, and then like
Put
do the
plug
thing to
in,
shoot
put the
it.
ball
I'm
in,
like,
and
do the thing to shoot it. I've never held a gun. I don't play Fortnite, and I've never held a gun.
that's
So that's a little bit about Miss Bad. Sheltered, a little bit sheltered. It's okay.
We still love you.
And Maggie still loves me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, we heard yesterday this term when we were talking about the tanks, especially because it said the tanks were really good at trench warfare. And I told you a little bit about, just to at least give you a picture in your mind of trench warfare.
Tanks could shoot up. and-
What can you guys tell me about either what you know or what you remember me saying about trench warfare from yesterday? Jason, what do you remember about or know about trench warfare?
You said that
Stop.
they would like get down in the ditch and then they would have to stay down and then get up, shoot, get back down.
That
It was
hard
it was
work.
like a shield.
Okay, so they were kind of using these, basically a trench is kind of like a ditch,
And opponents would use tanks to get them out.
okay? And so they could use that ditch as kind of like cover to keep themselves safe from enemy fire.
But then the tanks would come in and then make them all spray them out of there.
Okay, but the tanks could chase them out of there, right? And they could fire greater distances, heavier artillery. Okay, Grace, you've had your hand raised a while. What's up?
So what you said about trench warfare kind of reminds me of what we did this past summer. Because we were running electric up to our shed and we had a trencher. Basically it digs like a little hole how deep you want it, and it'll dig it, and then it'll
So you could bury like the electric cables underground? Okay,
that reminds me of that.
okay, so Grayson said it reminded him of something that happened with his family this summer. They were running electric out to their shed, and they had this machine called a trencher, and it literally just dug like a little hole as deep as they set it, and it dug this straight hole, so it just dug a hole in the ground all the way out to his shed so they could lay the power lines down underground and then fill it back up. So that's pretty cool. So, but that's what it was, is they were these man-made ditches basically, but unlike, I'm sure that Grayson's trench wasn't big enough for an army to get into. No, it's just laying power line.
I could
A little-
imagine it bit wider and deeper.
Right, but you can imagine if it was wider and deeper and you could have people lined up side by side with their guns on the top, ready to shoot. Zeke.
So, I was at my grandma's house in Arkansas. I was watching TV in the morning, and there was this documentary about Ulysses S. Grant and when he was an army general in the Civil War. They were in the trenches, and like it's so like it's like this line. It's a hole in the ground. It looks like it's like a strip of the earth taken out type of it, and then the people are the soldiers are in there, and they up and shoot and then come back down and reload or whatever. So it's just like these, and then tanks like. I don't know. Just like.
Okay, so I'm interested to see how the tanks. So Zeke said he was watching a documentary about Ulysses S. Grant, and in it they were showing scenes, and he said it looks like literally they just peeled a strip of land up, and then they were down in there. I don't know. In my head, I'm having trouble picturing how the tanks come into that. So today we're going to talk more about trench warfare and dig a little deeper
when
Oh, do
they
you see
did-
what I just did there? Dig a little deeper into trench
Oh,
warfare. Ha ha ha. Another bad Miss Bab joke. Ha
It
ha.
wasn't that
Ha ha
bad.
ha.
It wasn't that
Okay.
bad.
Wasn't that bad, Josie? Hand raised.
Totally.
So something that came to my mind was I remember in one of the Star Wars movies they had like that where it was like the red sand. They had a trench. That's all. Not much, but it just reminded me of
Okay.
that.
It was a really bad pun, wasn't it, Kane? Josie, I like that you made a connection from social studies to film. All right, here we go. In 1914, which is the year the war started, during World War I, trench warfare was a common fighting tactic in Europe. Modern weapons have been used for the first time at the start of the war, and this caused millions of deaths on both sides. These new weapons changed war tactics. Now, the traditional way of face to face fighting, known as open warfare, was way too deadly. Trench warfare became a safer place for soldiers to go. It offered more protection for soldiers than open warfare. So, open warfare would be like right here. We're just like out in the open. Yeah, and it's just me versus Grayson out in the open. There's no protection, there's no cover.
Keep the table open.
Yeah, so you just like pray the other guy isn't a good shot and like he misses. And so it'd be hundreds of soldiers just facing each other directly, shooting. And you've seen that in like movies and film where they're just running across a field shooting and whatever at each other. That's open warfare. So the trenches, okay, fast fact. Trench warfare was not invented during World War I. However, this is when it became the most common method of fighting. Sam.
When were you gonna tell her? Today or tomorrow?
Hang on.
You're gonna tell me. I just wasn't calling on him. Okay. Sorry, Sammer. I figured you already knew everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Lily. Yes. Okay. Trench warfare. Third paragraph. Was a fighting tactic where enemy troops dug deep trenches and enemy trenches faced each other. Trench building was very time consuming. It also varied at each battleground based on what the land was like there. The front trench line was also called the fire trench line and would often have bends in it rather than being straight. This limited casualties. Casualties are deaths.
Like dangerous.
Like how many deaths there were.
Oh.
A line of barbed wire would be placed ahead of the front trench. This added another layer of protection from the enemy. Why would that barbed wire, so if this was my trench right here, and then there was a barbed wire here, why would that barbed wire keep me even safer?
Because that would, if any enemy would come in, they would probably get stuck or stabbed.
Okay,
or stuff.
so if enemies were actually trying to come to the trench, they would hit the barbed wire and possibly get hurt, okay? Or it would at least slow them down so that I could get a shot in, right?
Yeah, because if they're that
Okay.
close and they're getting hurt, that's gonna be a pretty easy shot.
Right, yeah, if they get hurt on the barbed wire, it's going to be easier for you to take
You
it out.
didn't aim, just
Okay.
I also
Grayson.
so my cousin Scarlett, you guys all probably know her.
Yeah.
She's kind of a klutz. Like we were over at her Uncle Ed's one time. There was a cakewalk to go with his garden where we ride.
Hey, Grace, can you mute?
And then we went underneath. Well, there was only like one thing of bob wire about like this high maybe, and we all had to duck. And then she got cut on the cheek, so I can tell when secondhand experience would be like watching it.
Yeah, so Grayson said they were out and his cousin Scarlett got hit actually with some barbed wire. And so he's got not personal experience, but his cousin Scarlett, we all know Scarlett, got barbed wire in the face. Ouch. That doesn't feel,
So it
Get
can
barbed
leave
wire.
either a big scar
barbed
depending
wire.
on how hard you hit it.
yeah.
So if like they're running, then they hit it and then they kind of like, I don't know, their legs go up or something.
I mean,
And
it could
then
rip a
slide
hole
down,
in you,
It'll,
I would think,
it'll cut
if you hit it.
It'll cut them really bad.
Yeah. Riley.
So we all know Dakota French, right?
Yes.
So he was watching us one summer, well his mom was, and we were outside and he has barbed wire fence
oh yeah.
and my brother's pants got caught on it.
All right, that Riley said they were at the French's house, like Dakota French, and her brother Carter got his jeans stuck on barbed wire.
It
And
could be
okay,
Joker
all right.
or evil.
Here we go. Let's move on. Okay, this is where the supplies were held. Behind this trench was the reserve trench. It housed extra forces that could be sent forward if backup was needed. Troops rotated through the trenches. They offered them protection and covered them from the enemy. Trenches were safer than fighting out in the open. Still, they were a dangerous place to be.
They could because let's say it's a bomb, or let's say you're trapped in by, like, they're coming at you and a tank or something may have took out your barbed wire. You really have nowhere to go but trying to climb up out of that trench.
Okay. So the trenches could be dangerous, and what Grayson said is, you're down in this ditch. So if somebody gets across your line and is coming down in the ditch, you're kind of just stuck there. Like, it'd be hard for you to climb out and get away quickly. So,
Especially if it's a
right,
deep
very,
one.
very good point.
If they get close enough, could they throw bombs?
They could throw grenades, and I don't know if grenades were a thing yet. They haven't mentioned grenades. But yeah, I mean, that could be a problem.
The
They
poison
could
gas.
throw
All right.
poison gas in there, whatever.
The poison gas. Okay, all right, let's keep reading. Life in the trenches was terrible to experience. Dead bodies were sometimes used to build up support walls. The smell of corpses or dead bodies was everywhere. Trenches were often overcrowded and dirty. This meant they were also filled with disease and rats. During battles, soldiers in trenches were at risk of being hit by bullets from the enemy. They were also at risk of deadly gases being thrown into the trenches by the enemy. There you go. The space in between enemy trenches was known as no man's land. At the beginning of a battle, shots were fired from both sides across this area. After several days of firing, soldiers would rise out of their trenches into this area. This was called going over the top. Soldiers left the protection of their trenches to attack the enemy in no man's land. The ground of no man's land was choppy because of all the shell holes from shots fired. Barbed wire was carefully placed throughout this area. This made the land very difficult to navigate. If a soldier became stuck in no man's land, he would become an easy target for the enemy. A man's chances of surviving in no man's land were very slim. Sadly, a trip through it often meant only claiming a few hundred yards of land. Sam.
Yeah, like in baseball, they have no man's land, like between the bases, and then called no man's land because there's not a base, and you can't
Nothing
really,
there. Basically deserted.
and you kind of have to
Kind of like.
trick your way out. And
Okay. So, focus on what we're working on right now. Okay, stay on topic. All right. So Sam was telling us that there's also in baseball, it can be called no man's land in between the bases because there's nothing there. Okay. Countless soldiers were shot while in no man's land, but many didn't die right away. They might have only suffered one shot or a wound from barbed wire. In previous battles, medical care could have arrived sooner. This would have given soldiers a better chance of survival. But that wasn't the case during World War I. During trench warfare, most wounded soldiers were left to die. Even those lucky enough to be carried or dragged back to their trench might not live. They had to be strong enough to survive the conditions of the trench before they received medical care. So they just had to lay there wounded and hurt. If they'd have got shot and their arm is all like gross, like they just have to be in the
And
trench
the
and still
rats
try and
around,
fight and
they-
protect themselves.
Like if the rats are around and they carry like.
And
some disease.
yeah, exactly. The rats and the bugs and all of that, they're going to be drawn to anything that's wounded or infected.
And then they
Like the
could give
fish
them.
and hatchet.
It makes me think of the fish and hatchet this morning. Ew. So yeah, and I'm guessing that down in the trenches there wasn't a lot of clean water, food, supplies, anything like that. So you were just kind of
You can put like,
there.
You can.
And you couldn't, like they said, you couldn't just come out of the trench and go for a walk because the enemy is on the other side. They're going to see you and shoot you. So yeah, it was they had the protection of the trench, but the conditions of the trench weren't great. And there was no way to really get out once you were in. So, all right. Trench warfare became the common way of fighting during the war, yet a major problem with the method became very clear. Trench warfare consistently resulted in stalemates. A stalemate is a position where neither side of the fight can advance.
So
Both
basically,
sides are
right?
stuck in the same place. Battles dragged on for months because neither side gained more than a few yards. Meanwhile, thousands of lives were lost. It was nearly impossible for either side to win in trench warfare. Trench warfare had a lot to do with World War I lasting as long as it did. So imagine this. I'm down in my trench right here. Here I am in a trench. And I'm going to send a few guys up. All right, go out there in no man's land. Head up to the next level trench. We're going to move up closer to the enemy. But to keep the bad guys from getting to me, I've got... What is W1? No, you're fine, babe. Thank you, darling. Oh, okay, thanks. Packets for the next couple weeks. Okay, this is just dearest Ella W. W, as I call her. Okay, all right. Now let's return. Okay, I'm in my trench, and I want to send my guys up. But the field out here in between me and the next trench is filled with barbed wire, and the ground is all like got pits and dents and stuff in it from where they've been shooting cannons and other things. So the land is all tore up, and it's got barbed wire everywhere. So my guys, like once they finally get out of the trench, they're like having to tiptoe through very slowly and carefully. So the guys on the other trench, they're like, look at that guy. Boom, done. Now me tiptoeing through, I'm like, I'm down, right? So now, can either side get very far? No. So then you're just like, okay, well, I killed like all your guys that are willing to come out. And they're like, you killed all of my guys, then nobody else wants to come out because they know if they come out, they're going to get shot. So nobody's leaving the trench anymore. So they're just both sitting there waiting for somebody to come out, and nobody's come out. So you're just sitting there and nothing's happening. So this makes sense now why a tank would help, because does a tank have to worry about the uneven ground or the barbed wire?
No, and it's armored.
It's armored and it can shoot. So the tank can drive through no man's land and not have to worry,
It
right?
can fly through barbed wire too.
Yeah, so it could take out the barbed wire. Now, we've got some questions.
Miss Pepper, I have were landmines invented yet?
They haven't mentioned landmines. I don't think so yet. I could be wrong, but I don't think so yet. I don't think we had landmines yet. Sam, what do you think?
I don't think they did.
In World War
Like later. No. I'm at World War I.
We're in World War I right now.
Yeah, I know. I missed.
Okay.
I think later.
All right. There are questions on this. If you have hung with me through this entire call and actually been a part of the discussion, most of the questions we actually discussed. How did fighting change during the war? What was fighting like in the wars previous?
open warfare.
Open warfare. What was open warfare?
It's where you just stand out with nothing to protect you.
Yeah, everybody's out in the field, just my side, your side, we're all just shooting each other, standing in a field. Like dodgeball, except with bullets.
They go.
Yeah, Holly Lils. All right.
But they go about
Josie.
times faster.
So were the trenches like where you knelt down in them, or were they like as deep as where you can stand in them?
I'm going to look up a picture, but to make sure I don't show 10 and 11-year-olds something too gory, I'm not going to share my screen
Oh, I
yet.
like gory stuff.
Oh, yeah, I am sharing.
Can I look it up?
Miss Fab, it looks like
Hang on.
Miss Fab, it looks like it can.
At the bottom.
At the bottom of our page, it can. He is standing.
Let me share my screen.
Those are pretty deep. Real deep.
Wait, what? You should do your whole screen, Miss Fab.
All right, so here's a trench.
I think they have put water in there.
Oh, it's Ducksters. This is a safe article. Okay. Dang it, says Jason. He wanted something bloody and gory. So you can see that picture there. It's kind of tiny. But so they can stand down in it and they're just like leaned over, ready to shoot. Here's one that's a little deeper. They're like all the way. The trench is deep enough that they're standing way down in it.
But the farther back you stand, they could have more chance of seeing you. The more you're up against the wall, the better chance you have.
Good
Okay.
point.
Oh, science. Ooh, there's a picture with the guy crouching.
Hang on just a
with
second.
his
I need
leg
to change
on.
how I'm presenting.
That's cool.
Yeah, someone's leg's missing.
The guy with the missing leg, I'm not showing that.
Please.
Yeah, literally.
Please don't.
His leg is disattached.
Amputated. It's not like it's missing, it's amputated. He's
Not-
kneeling.
Not his.
Oh, that guy looks dead though.
Yeah, they
Awesome.
remember it talked about how they use it for more cover. They put
See,
They
some
would
like
stack the bodies for more cover. They did say that. Yeah, look at this. Does this look like any place you want to be? Look at the soldiers down in this trench.
yeah,
yeah.
it
That
is.
can't
doesn't
see.
look fun.
I would
Well,
love
guess-
to have my birthday there.
I think you're being sarcastic,
Oh, no, no.
I'm not.
Totally not, wink wink.
and it's all wet and muddy down there.
You know you weren't even presenting to them, right?
I am.
Yeah, she is.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
okay.
Miss Fab, Parker just said because people pee.
True.
Well, they had to go somewhere. They don't have
Yeah, is
to-
there a bathroom in this trench?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
So now we've got.
It has to be.
somewhere or nowhere. Yeah, that's
All right.
That's true.
Just
There we
take
go.
It's too cold.
So that probably gave you a little bit more of a image.
Yeah.
Images.
You guys want to do the questions you want to talk about? Okay. So hopefully that gave you a little bit more of an image that you could picture in your brain of what the trenches look like. The conditions don't look so hot. Josie.
Can I just send the whole thing blank if we're gonna go over all of them?
Yeah, yeah. If you were on the call with me, you can just submit it without doing anything to it.
That gives me more time for myself.
That's the bonus you get for hanging with me and actually participating in
Wait,
social studies
We
today.
stayed with you.
We weren't on the call.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are with me. That counts.
But even if we want
If you're filling it out as you go, is that going to hurt anything?
No, it's
No, because you can use this as part of your study guide for the test later, okay? But you can also just hold on to the article as well, because we're going to put this in our social studies folder when we're done. What is a stalemate? What does that word mean? Zekel.
It's when like the circumstance you said when like so they send guys out through the no man's land to get more land, and then they like run out of people and then it's a stalemate. They're just like nothing. Well, like if no one's like willing to fight anymore, will go out anymore, and they're just stuck here.
I was totally playing with your hair. Yes,
That's
nobody's willing. It's a stalemate. It means nobody's willing to make the next move. Everybody's just kind of where they're at. Nobody's making the next move. Okay. All right, Jason.
That's what Miss Lambert does to Colin's hair.
Miss Lambert runs her fingers through Colin's hair. I was doing that just to, wake up, Maggie. All right.
Don't wake up, Maggie.
So, what is the key idea that we were to learn from this?
Trench warfare.
Well, it's basically.
Thank you for telling me the title.
Oh, I
No,
know.
Tell me more, Kendall.
That's what we were supposed to learn from.
They wanted us to know what's going on in the wars, but why there's trench wars. I mean, trench
Hey,
warfare.
tell us more about what was going on in the war, how it was being fought. Josie.
More about how, I guess how it was in the trench warfare, like in the trench.
Okay. Why was trench warfare one of the main reasons World War I lasted so long?
Because
Like,
of
not that
stalemates.
many people died.
Stalemates. Because of stalemates.
And
It's-
how long it for one to dig to the other side? It said.
Okay. Zeke's yelling because of stalemates. What is your thing, Grayson?
Because it said something about kind of just slowly going through no man's land and digging their trench more towards the enemy.
Okay.
And it took a while for
It's-
them to actually.
Okay. It said digging trenches took a long time. It said trying to cross no man's land to get to the next level of trenches took a long time. Most people didn't make it. And then at that point, it turned into a stalemate where neither side was willing to send more people out of the cover. So they all literally just stood around waiting for anybody to pop their head out so they could take them out. So it just took forever and ever and ever. Okay? All right. So trench warfare here's the main idea. Trench warfare, new way of fighting. We're not out in the open. We have some cover in the trench. However, it created a situation where the second you did pop out in the open, you were picked off. So it caused everybody to just stay hidden the whole stinking war, and the war never went anywhere. Nobody was winning battles because everybody just stayed hidden in their holes, their trenches. Okay, that's what I got for Social Studies Day. Grayson.
So, if they're staying in their trench and just putting their gun over, how would they know that someone was going to?
They had like lookout guys, I think. Or like, was it Zeke said yesterday, or used the little periscope thing that could see out over? So they would have like, just like any war, there would be generals and other leaders that would have like somebody like that was a lookout or positioned a little bit higher in the trench so that they could see. But they were still kind of undercover so that like, you know, they don't get hit. The enemy can't see them from far away, but they have their head out enough to know if they're starting to get charged or something by the enemy. Okay. All right. Save this article. Put it in your social studies folder so that you have it. So at the end of this unit, you have it to use to study with. Okay. And that's what I've got for today. Any other final questions before we clean up and pack up? Josie, yes, ma'am.
Yet again, it's for after you can stop recording.
Josie always tells me to stop recording for her random